是我们中国的，看一下底下。这是什么？界上只有一个中国，没有第二个中国，没有中华民国，中华民国已经灭亡了。
Hey everyone, and welcome back to Sip and Talk. We're trying something a little different for today's deep dive.
Oh.
You're sipping on some bubble tea.
Ooh, very appropriate.
Got to stay on theme, right, Joyce?
Here's to that. Although last time I traveled, I had kind of a funny travel experience that made me think twice about trying new things.
Oh no, what happened?
I accidentally booked a flight to the wrong country.
No way.
Yeah, ended up in Panama instead of...
Oh my gosh.
Well, let's just say I learned my lesson about double-checking those itineraries.
You got to look at that fine print.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh my gosh. Well, I can't wait to hear more about that later. But first up, we have got a listener question that's got us thinking about international affairs,
Ooh, okay.
specifically China.
Yeah.
So you send in a whole bunch of articles about Taiwan, the Republic of China, the ROC, the People's Republic of China, the PRC, and this phrase, there is only one China, that keeps popping up everywhere.
It's everywhere, yeah.
And we're diving in to help you make sense of it all.
Yeah, because it's like, is there some secret second China that we don't know about? Like, what's the deal?
Right. So to set the stage a little bit, we need to go back in time. The ROC was actually established in 1912, and it included mainland China.
Yeah, and that's actually kind of mind-blowing that the ROC predates the PRC.
I know, right?
Yeah.
But then things got complicated after the Chinese Civil War in 1949.
Right.
The ROC government fled to Taiwan, and the PRC was established on the mainland.
Exactly.
Okay, so we've got these two separate entities, both claiming to be China. Enter the one China principle. The PRC basically says, nope, we're the only legitimate government of China, and that includes Taiwan.
Yeah, and that's where the controversy starts, right? Because around 180 countries recognize the PRC as China.
Wow.
But the ROC in Taiwan is still functioning with its own government, its own military, and even has diplomatic relations with 13 countries.
So it's like having two roommates who both claim to be the real owner of the apartment.
Exactly. And to make things even more confusing, most people just call the ROC Taiwan these days.
Yeah, which just adds to the whole, like, what is going on?
Right. So you have this one China principle being pushed, but then you have this whole other entity operating independently.
So are there really two Chinas?
Well, not exactly. Technically, from an internationally recognized standpoint, there's only one China, and that's the PRC.
Okay.
They're the ones with the seat at the UN and kind of call the shots on the global stage.
Okay, so one China on paper, but a very complex reality on the ground.
Yeah.
But here's what I don't get. Why is the PRC so insistent on this one China narrative? Is it really just about a piece of land?
I don't think so. I think it's definitely more than just land. You know that Chinese proverb, yellow? It basically means the more you deny something, the more suspicious it seems.
Oh, yeah, like when you're trying to hide something and you just end up drawing more attention to it.
Exactly. And I think that's what's happening here. The PRC's like aggressive insistence on one China almost seems like a sign of anxiety about Taiwan's status. Like they're protesting too much.
Yeah, I see what you mean.
Yeah.
They're not just talking the talk either.
Yeah,
They're walking the walk.
Yeah.
The articles mention some pretty strong-arm tactics that the PRC uses to try and enforce this idea.
Oh, yeah.
Like demanding that countries cut ties with Taiwan.
Yeah.
Remember when Panama switched recognition to the PRC back in 2017?
Yeah, and then there was that whole thing with Lithuania a few years ago. They let Taiwan open a representative office using the name Taiwan, and the PRC went ballistic.
Really?
Downgraded diplomatic relations, imposed economic sanctions. It was intense.
So it's like they're trying to squash any little hint that Taiwan might be anything other than a part of mainland China.
Yeah.
But isn't that kind of backfiring?
See, and that's what's so fascinating about this. All that pressure, all those strong-arm tactics, they're actually drawing more global attention to Taiwan.
Right.
And raising questions about its status.
It's like trying to hide a giant elephant behind a tiny houseplant.
Right. It's not going to work.
It's not going to work.
And you know what else is interesting? It seems like a lot of countries are publicly playing along with this one China idea.
Yeah. But behind the scenes, they're supporting Taiwan.
You're right. The U.S. is a perfect example.
Right.
Officially, they recognize the PRC, but they also sell arms to Taiwan and maintain really strong unofficial ties. It's a delicate balancing act, for sure.
It is.
Okay. So we've got international intrigue, we've got political maneuvering, and a whole lot of history, all wrapped up in this one China situation.
Yeah. This is getting juicy.
This is getting good.
Yeah.
I think we need to take a moment and appreciate our delicious bubble tea.
Yes, definitely.
We'll be right back after a quick sip to explore even more about this fascinating topic.
Sounds good.
All right, so we've established this one China thing. It's more complicated than it looks on the surface.
Definitely more complicated.
It's like everyone's playing this elaborate game of pretend on the world stage.
It really is. And,
Yeah.
the implications of this game go way beyond just diplomatic handshakes and UN seats.
Oh, absolutely.
It affects the lives of everyday people.
Yeah.
In both mainland China and Taiwan. Right. And the articles talked about how the PRC pushes this one China narrative really hard domestically.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
I mean, they control the media, they control the education system. It's everywhere.
It's like a core part of the national identity,
Yeah.
almost like a sacred belief.
Right. And for a long time, it probably was pretty effective.
Yeah, probably.
But now with the internet and access to all kinds of information, I wonder if that tight control is actually starting to backfire.
Ooh, interesting.
Like if you tell people they can't have something, doesn't it just make them want it more?
Oh, that's a really good point. Imagine growing up hearing only one side of the story, and then suddenly you have access to this whole world of different perspectives online.
Yeah.
You would start to question things.
You can't help but be like, wait a minute, what's going on here?
Exactly.
Think about how much we learn just by traveling and experiencing different cultures.
Yeah, absolutely.
You can't really understand a place until you've been there, talked to the people, seen things for yourself.
Totally. And that's what I think the PRC might be underestimating.
Yeah.
This younger generation in China, they're growing up with VPNs, with social media.
Yeah.
They're exposed to different ideas, different ways of thinking, and they're not afraid to kind of push back a little bit.
It's like trying to build a dam to hold back the tide.
Ooh.
Eventually, that water's going to find a way through.
It will.
And in this case, the water is information.
That's such a good analogy.
Yeah.
And it's not just about access to information, though. It's
Yeah.
about how people identify.
Right.
If you live in Taiwan and you have your own government, your own way of life, being told you're just a province of mainland China, that might not sit well with you.
Especially if you've never even been to mainland China.
Exactly.
It'd be like me telling you that you're technically a citizen of, I don't know, Iceland,
What?
because they have better health care.
Haha. Exactly.
It just doesn't make sense
It doesn't make sense.
on a personal level.
And that disconnect between the official narrative and people's lived experiences, that can create a lot of tension.
A lot of tension, a lot of questions.
Yeah.
So the PRC is trying to control the narrative, but they might actually be fueling the very thing that they fear.
Right.
Stronger sense of separate identity in Taiwan. It's like they're accidentally creating their own opposition.
I love that. And this is where it gets really interesting, because the PRC's actions, they have consequences beyond just Taiwan.
Yeah.
They're sending a message to the rest of the world about how they intend to kind of exert their power and influence.
And that message might not be the one that they're intending to send.
Right.
Because other countries are watching and they're seeing a China that's willing to use economic pressure, diplomatic strong-arming to get its way.
It makes you wonder what this all means for the future of international relations,
Yeah.
Is this the new normal, a world where countries are forced to choose sides between the PRC and, well, everyone else?
That's a little scary,
Yeah,
a little concerning.
it is.
And it seems like this one China issue is a key part of that bigger picture.
It definitely is. And it just highlights how important it is to understand the nuances, the history behind these seemingly simple slogans.
Right.
Because when you dig a little deeper, you realize it's about so much more than just a name on a map.
So much more.
It's about power identity and that struggle to control the narrative in a world where information flows so freely.
It really is.
Yeah.
And it's a story that's still unfolding.
It is.
With potentially huge implications for all of us.
Absolutely. I think we need another sip of bubble tea to process all of that.
Me too. This is intense.
This is some serious geopolitical deep diving.
It is. But before we get too lost in the complexities of international relations,
Yeah.
let's shift gears for a moment and talk about something a little bit closer to home.
Okay.
Our YouTube channel, Mickey to Life.
Ah, yes. The perfect antidote to geopolitical headaches.
Exactly. So if you are craving some more lighthearted content, think travel stories, whiskey reviews, maybe even a bubble tea flavored deep dive or two. Head over to Mickey to Life and hit that subscribe button.
You won't regret it.
Okay, now that we've given our brains a little break,
Yeah.
let's get back to this one China issue.
Okay.
We've covered a lot of ground already, but there's still so much more to explore.
You're right. We've talked about the history, the international implications, the domestic narrative.
Yeah.
But to really understand how complex the situation is, We need to look at some specific examples of how the PRC's actions are playing out in the real world.
And that's exactly what we'll be doing in part 3 of this deep dive.
Ooh, can't wait.
So stay tuned.
Yeah.
Because things are about to get even more interesting.
I'm ready.
Okay, so we're back, bubble tea refilled, and ready to tackle some real-world examples of this one China situation.
Yes, because as we've been talking about, it's not just some kind of abstract idea, you know?
Right.
It has real effects on how countries interact, how people live their lives.
Absolutely. And one of the most interesting examples I thought from the articles was how the PRC uses its economic clout to try and enforce this one China principle.
Oh, for sure.
China's a huge economic powerhouse,
Oh, yeah.
and they're not afraid to use that power to pressure other countries.
It's true. Money talks. Right. Money talks.
And in this case, it seems like the PRC is using its economic voice to kind of silence any dissent on Taiwan.
Exactly. We already mentioned Panama, but there are so many other examples.
Oh, yeah?
Like I was reading a few years ago, a major international airline got in trouble with the PRC for listing Taiwan as a separate country on their website.
Oh, wow.
They were basically forced to change it or risk losing access to the entire Chinese market.
It's a big market to lose.
It's a huge market.
Yeah.
So it's not just about official diplomatic recognition.
Right.
It's about controlling that whole narrative,
Everything.
even down to how companies and organizations refer to Taiwan.
Exactly. And it's not just companies that are feeling that pressure either.
Right.
Think about international organizations like the World Health Organization.
Oh, yeah.
You know, Taiwan has a lot of expertise to offer, especially when it comes to public health,
But they're often excluded from participating because of the PRC's objections.
which just seems so short-sighted,
It is.
especially considering all of the global health challenges that we've faced in recent years.
It really is.
It's like refusing to listen to a doctor just because you don't like their political affiliation.
Exactly. It just highlights the potential downsides of this, rigid adherence to the one China principle.
Yeah.
It can actually harm global cooperation and progress
Totally.
in all these important areas.
And it makes you wonder if the PRC strategy is actually working in the long run.
Right.
Because it seems like the more they try to control the narrative and silence dissent, the more they fuel global curiosity and sympathy for Taiwan.
Yeah, that's the fascinating paradox here. It's
Dang
like
it.
they're inadvertently creating a Streisand effect,
Oh, yeah.
where their attempts to suppress something only end up amplifying it.
It's like that time I tried to hide a bad haircut under a hat,
Oh,
and everyone just kept asking me about my hat.
no. Exactly. Sometimes the best way to draw attention to something is to try to hide it.
It's so true.
Yeah,
And it just speaks to the unintended consequences of the PRC's actions.
it really does.
They might be trying to isolate Taiwan, but they might actually be pushing it further into the global spotlight.
And that spotlight is only getting brighter, too.
It is.
Think about all the high-profile visits from U.S. politicians to Taiwan in recent years.
Oh, yeah. Every time that happens, it's a big deal.
Huge diplomatic incident with the PRC.
Yeah.
But it also kind of reinforces Taiwan's image as this democratic, independent entity.
Exactly. So it puts other countries in a difficult position.
A very difficult position.
It's like, do you follow the PRC's lead and isolate Taiwan?
Yeah.
Or do you risk economic and diplomatic retaliation by engaging with it? It's a tough balancing act.
It's a high-stakes game of would you rather for the whole world.
It really is.
Okay.
And the stakes are only getting higher as tensions rise.
Definitely. And it's a game where there are no easy answers.
No easy answers.
Because most countries recognize the PRC as the official China, but there's also this growing recognition of Taiwan's unique status
Absolutely.
and the importance of its democracy.
So what does all of this mean for the future of the one China situation? It's hard to say for sure.
It really is.
But one thing is for certain. This is a topic that's going to keep dominating headlines and shaping global politics for years to come.
It will. It's a story with no clear ending,
Well,
but it's one that deserves our attention and careful consideration.
I agree.
Because understanding these complexities of the one China issue is essential to navigating this increasingly interconnected world that we live in.
Well said. I think we've officially reached peak brain capacity for one episode.
Me too. You never know what you're going to find over there.
Yeah, exactly. So stay tuned, stay curious, and as always, cheers to expanding your horizons.